I do remember one time my father was in prison and there was thousands and thousands of Islamists. They gathered outside our house and tried to burn down the house while we are in the house. I'm talking about an experience of a 10-year-old boy looking outside from the window and seeing thousands of Islamists throwing the rocks and throwing petrol bombs into our house. Our house was partially burned. And I cannot forget those moments. And when my father died in prison, his body came to home. And before we take his body to burial grounds, the police showed up with another warrant to arrest him, to arrest the body.
My guest today has one of the most extraordinary stories we've ever featured. Born in Pakistan, Mansoor Laghari grew up watching his father spend 27 years in prison for defending minority rights and standing up to extremists. Years later, Mansoor would serve in the United States Army, become a human rights advocate, and dedicate his life to fighting extremism and building bridges between Muslims and Jews. Recently, he traveled to Israel for the first time. He visited communities devastated by October 7th. He met wounded IDF soldiers. He met a Jewish mother whose son was on life support. He entered the Al-Aqsa mosque wearing a yellow hostage pin and was told to remove it or leave. And a few weeks ago, he marched in New York's Israel Day parade as a proud Muslim supporter of peace and coexistence. Mansoor, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Of course, our honor. In your Israel trip, you visited wounded IDF soldiers in the hospital. At that point, you met a Jewish mother whose son was on life support. Can you tell us that story, that interaction that you had, and how it affected you?
Yeah. So, my friend, that experience was nothing I expected with the whole trip. There was one of the most emotional moment of my trip because when I went there, I was not sure that being a Muslim, going and meeting with the IDF soldiers, how it's going to be received on the other side. So I did meet a lot of IDF soldiers, young kids, missing limbs, missing legs, really shattered bodies. And every single soldier I met welcomed me, gave me a hug, and they were open. They were actually happy to see me there, which I was not expecting. But when I saw it, it was, heartwarming that, they were open to receive me. So that was, something. I was in this, emotional roller coaster. And then I went to see this, I see IDF soldier who was in recent, war. He was on life support. And I went there and he has his mother there. And she was about, I'll say like 70, 80 years old. Wonderful lady. Wonderful. And when I went there, I was there to support her, what her son was going through. And I talked to her. I introduced myself, and the experience I felt, the love was unimaginable. And then she wanted me to sit down and have a dinner with her. And I was like, I have a flight in like an hour and I have to leave. I'm sorry. And then I see her getting up, going around. She got this plastic bag in her hand. She is throwing some soda cans in there. She putting some fruit in there. She cutting the bread. I was like, what is she doing? And I asked her, I was like, I'm sorry, I want you to, I want to talk to you, but what are you doing? She's like, no, sit down. You're leaving, you're traveling. I got to make sure you have enough food to, to bring with you. And it was just, unimaginable how, with all this grief, young son, he was, I think, barely like in 30s, 30, maybe even younger than 30, on life support. And what she was doing is she was caring about a stranger, and a stranger Muslim from a different part of the world who happened to be there. And at that time, she forgot her grief. And only thing she remembered to make sure that I have enough things to carry with me for my journey. And that was something which touched my heart. And if someone doesn't, you know, learn from that experience, then there's nothing in the world which can taught you anything. Yeah, and the meeting, that meeting reminded me that conflict are ultimately measured in human lives, not headlines. Behind every statics is a family carrying the unimaginable grief. And a lot of times we lose our sight in the numbers and the thing, but one life is a one generation, is a family, it's is whole world. So yeah, but that was something I will never forget until I die. The love of that Jewish mother, that was just unimaginable. It was just, I still get like goosebumps when I talk about it. But I will never forget that.
You visited the Al-Aqsa Mosque. You were wearing a yellow hostage pin, and they asked you to take it off or to leave. What did that pin represent to you personally, and how did that whole experience affect you?
Yes, Daniel. So as a Muslim, wearing a hostage pin at Al-Aqsa was important to me because human suffering could never be selective. The hostage included Muslims, Jews, Christians, children, women, and elderly people. Supporting their support should not be controversial. Unfortunately, some people reacted negatively. That experience reminded me how difficult it can be challenging the dominant narratives, but it also reinforced my belief that moral consistency matters. We should be able to condemn suffering regarding who the victims are. Yes.
Okay. Why do you think it was that, the pin bothered them so much? Were you surprised that supporting hostages was viewed as something controversial?
I never thought walking in there because I wanted to show the solidarity with hostages, and I was not expecting anything what happened. And once I got there, I start seeing the people giving me dirty looks and looking at me like I'm an alien. And then the security chief, I believe was a Jordanian, he showed up and he demanded my passport, and he asked me to show me his my passport, and I showed him my passport. And what he said was kind of something which like still I haven't, I'm thinking about it, because he looked at my name and he says that you're supposed to be Muslim. And at that time I was shocked because wearing a pin doesn't make me other than a Muslim. So him saying that you're supposed to be Muslim, and I say, yes, I am, Alhamdulillah, I am a Muslim. Then he said, why you're wearing a Jewish pin? I was like, this is not a Jewish pin. This is, for the hostages. And I, as a human rights activist, support the return of the hostages. And I want to, show my solidarity with the hostages. But that didn't sit well. And then at the point where I was briefly detained, he took my passport and he made me walk to the front door, and things spiraled from there. And then, he asked me to remove the pin because it's upsetting the other Muslims there. And it just, I was in shock actually because, living in the United States and advocating for human rights, I never thought that at the religious place, which is the third most important, religious site for Muslims. As a Muslim, I will be kicked out or removed from that place. So it was, yes, it was shocking. And I told my friends that finally in Israel, I find where the apartheid is, which is here at the Al-Aqsa Mosque.
Yeah, you wrote that the only place you were restricted was under Muslim authority, right?
Exactly.
Explain that.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That is true. And that was shocking for me because I was not expecting someone get so upset and so much resistant about wearing a small little pin to show the solidarity with the hostages, which is just not Jewish hostages. There was Muslim hostages. There were Christians. There was people from Philippines, Thailand, and there was the Muslims who were also hostages. So it was upsetting incident for me, and not to able to pray to that place, which is the most important. One of the most important place in Muslim religion. It was shocking. Yes.
Why do you think it is that they feel this way regarding a hostage pin? Is it because they believe that Israel is occupying their land, or do you think it's something religious, or what do you think is the ideology behind that?
I think the ideology behind it is the misinformation going around and making things that supporting Israel is something which is not supposed to be done by Muslims, at least. And that was the whole point, because he was trying to push me in that direction, that I'm supporting Israel. And that was unexpected, and they were not expected that. And the whole life I, talked to a lot of Muslims, and there's so much misinformation. There was so much bias in the information. They get the biased information, and they don't want to accept the reality, which is that Israel belongs to Jewish people for thousands of years. It is not something happened in 1948, but they don't want to talk about it because they know they're going to lose the argument.
Now, what was the rest of your trip like? Maybe take us through some of the highlights of of your trip.
Yes, Daniel. So, as far as my trip goes, it was eye opening, I will say, because I have heard so many things about Israel, and there was so much misinformation that once I landed, I was expecting a lot of things. I was expecting, people will be taking me on the side and will be asking me the questions in the airport and this and that. But it was breezed through. I, walked through like I go to different countries. I, visit the world. I go to different, places, airports. And it was pretty similar to any place I go. And once I walked out of the airport and I looked around and I see that Israel is just as, you know, another country like any other place. It is, there was no soldiers pointing guns at me, asking me, you know, as a Muslim, what I'm doing here. And then I, left the airport and I see the people. Walked, I drove through the towns and cities, and I see everyone is going about their life, and it was a it was a beautiful experience. And I see that every religion, everyone is free to happy to live their life, and like any place, like any other place. It was not what I heard. It was like I heard that, okay, there will be Muslims who will be praying under the guns of IDF soldiers, and I expected tension everywhere. Instead, I saw Jewish, Muslim, Christian, Druze, and other working together in hospitals, businesses, universities, and communities. And that was eye opening for me in first time in Israel and walking through. And honestly, I pulled over some people, like some Muslims on the side, and I asked them, I was like, how they feel. And they looked at me like, what do you mean? I mean, we live here, we work here, we have our children, we have our future. So they were surprised, like wondering what I'm trying to ask them. And it was, you know, so at the end, the Israel I experienced was far more diverse, complex, and human than image often portrayed by internationally and all these news media outlets. So yes, it was eye opening. It was a divine experience, and I loved it.
I speak to a lot of people, and they have the same experience as you. They come into Israel thinking that they're walking into apartheid because the
Yes.
media is always talking about it. But when you come to Israel, it's a completely different reality. Why do you think the media tries to paint Israel as a place of apartheid, as a place that Muslims are separate, Jews are separate, everything. When in the Middle East, it's probably the most diverse country with the most freedom.
Exactly. Yes. It's unfortunate. I mean, what I see is there's a flood of misinformation which is being spread by a lot of news media outlets. I don't know. I mean, I know that there's a lot of influence on the mainstream media by Islamists and by some other uh, state players who are spending millions and billions of dollars to keep that narrative going, and that is what I want to fight against, because we want to bring the truth. We want to show the world what truly Israel is, what truly happens there, and that's the fight we are fighting here, because there's so much, even like people's in my family, I talk to them, like my friends who are Muslims, and they don't believe me. And they'll be like, no, it's not right. And so much they get from the media. They're like, oh, look at this report. They send me, different uh, articles from different news media. I'm like, oh, look at that. Look at that. What are you saying? It's not right. I was like, no, because I seen it with my eyes. And that is where the issue comes in,
Yeah.
because the media is so biased, and it is I honestly believe that it is the influence from Islamist countries. I will gladly name Qatar. I think Qatar has a lot of influence on the media, and the way they worked for last 50 years to make their mark and slowly kind of like control the media and try to push this Muslim Brotherhood narrative out. And that is going on in universities, in colleges, college campuses, and all over the West. So there was an investment made 50 years ago, and they are still trying to, work on that. They took 50 years to change the narrative in this West, and that's what we are seeing on the college campuses.
Now, you recently marched in the New York's Israel Day parade. You wrote that I'm marching not despite being Muslim, but because I am Muslim. Famously, people are talking about the mayor who didn't show to the Israel Day parade.
Yes.
Maybe take us through that and how you felt
Yeah,
in that.
so Daniel, I marched because I believe Muslims and Jews have a shared future. I marched because anti-Semitism is wrong. I marched because supporting Israel's right to exit does not require abandoning compassion for Palestinians. Most importantly, I marched because I wanted Jewish Americans to know they are not alone, because it seems to be that is being projected that all the Muslims hate Israel, hate Jewish, but that's not true. One of the most powerful moments was when a Holocaust survivor hugged me and thanked me for being there. Just imagine, he was sitting in a wheelchair. He looked at me. He looked at our banner. He looked at my shirt, because I was wearing a shirt says Muslims for Israel. And he was on the side, sitting, and he waved it, and I waved him back. And I went to him, and he looked at me, and he gave me a hug. And his eyes were teary. Just think about that moment. The people who suffered Holocaust, and now after 60, 70 years, they are feeling the same rhetoric, same, narrative they were seeing in 1930s and 40s in Germany. They are feeling the same thing. And it filled me like I was as a Muslim. Like, I was there to support my Jewish family, my Jewish brothers and sisters. And that hug meant so much for me. And look at his teary eyes. I cannot even imagine putting myself in his shoes and think what he's thinking. That's after so many years, the hatred is still strong. The anti-Semitism is still strong. And the modern world we talk about 21st century. We are in, different age, but the hatred is still going on, and it is sad, and it is so depressing to think about.
I feature a lot of Muslims on my channel that are pro-Israel, against anti-Semitism, just like yourself, and every single one of them are very, very special. Why do you think that so many people remain silent about it? That these people like yourself remain a minority when the majority either side with it or they just don't say anything about it.
Yes. So, Daniel, I mean, this is something I am personally struggling with it. I am trying to figure this thing out. So I may get this answer not correct, but what is going on is there's two different, let's divide the Muslims into different groups. There's Muslims who live in the West, then Muslims who live in basically in East and Muslim majority countries. And the way I see it is that the Muslims who live in Muslim majority countries, they are bombarded every single day with anti-Israel, anti-Jewish hate from the mosque, from the madrasas, from the media, from the social media. And if someone dares to stand up and bring the truth to the masses, bring the truth to the communities, they are demonized. Most probably they get killed. And one of the example is one of my friends, he was a journalist, Imtiaz Mir in Pakistan, and he was assassinated last year. He visited Israel. He was Pakistani. He was in Pakistan, and he was a newscaster. He has his own TV show, and he featured Israeli, Jewish people from Israel, and he tried to bring it truth. So when the people see what happens for the people who try to bring the truth, this is how they end up. Now, basically, everyone, wants to want to live their life. They want to do, take care of their kids like everyone else. But when those kind of examples, like the Islamists, they are loud, they're violent, and they know, and they have support. They are supported by states. The Muslim countries, the states do support Islamists. I mean, I know from my personal experience in Pakistan, there was almost 400 organizations, Islamist organizations, who are extremists. And at some degree, they're all supported by the state. They get the money, they get the training, because state uses those organizations. And same thing I hear from other countries, Muslim majority countries, having the same thing. When we move towards the West, a lot of people bring that ideology. And also, if whenever I go to mosque, I hear that same sermon I heard in Pakistan, in the West, because unfortunately, especially in European countries, the governments have lost their spine. They have surrendered against the Islamists. And this is what we see, that this is the outcome of their surrender, that these extremist mullahs, extremist Islamists are running the mosques and preaching anti-Jewish, anti-Israel sentiment every single day. And then it is very lonely place for someone like me or the people who want to support Israel and also support the Jewish people and support unity and brotherhood and peace. We are alone. Sometimes we leave our friends leave us, our families leave us, and we do all. At the end, we end up and some, at the end of the terrorist bullet. Now, as personally, I experienced that this is something I hear from a lot of people who support Israel and support Jewish people and support the unity, that they feel alone. They don't even, I mean, it is very hard for us to have a support from any Muslim organization or community. But unfortunately, when it comes to big Jewish organizations, we don't get any support from them either. So I jokingly say to people like, we are orphans who, like nobody wants to, like support us. And this is sad because I recently wrote about anti-Semitism organizations on Jewish side. They think that if having a big ballroom conferences for people who are already on board is going to change anything. It will not. It has to be worked. It is the hate is spreading for thousands of years, and someone has to counter that systematically from the ground up. Ballrooms will not defeat anti-Semitism. You have to be on the ground and talking to the people, educating people who are at the ground zero. So that's what I think. I hope I answer your question.
No, beautiful answer. I agree with you 100%. What has been the personal cost for you speaking out? Have you lost friends? Have you received threats? Anything you care to share with us?
Yes, Daniel. So yes, I have lost my friends, peoples who I always counted on to be a support system. I lost their support, and when we try to talk to them, they are so much in this bubble. They get so much information inside the bubble that they are not able to even comprehend what is going on. They don't have, like, they don't want to even open their mind because there's a bombardment of all this information going through different, especially nowadays with the social media and AI. You see those fake videos. I mean, I tried to, take a part of all those fake AI videos, and I try to, bring them and see, and I send them back those videos they send me, and I show them. I was like, listen, this is how, you can tell these are fake. And yes, I mean, this is a lonely place for a Muslim who's supporting Israel and Jewish people. It is a lonely place. You lose your family, you lose your friends, and that's what happening to us. But and it's just not me. It's just, is a lot of people I talk to who are in the same category like me, and they all have the same experience. I just saw the article wrote by Noor Dahiri, who is a great supporter of Israel, and he wrote the same things, that how hard it is for being a Muslim, and how much we lose for our support for Israel and the Jewish people. And I'm not saying that that is something we're not supposed to do. We stand for Israel, and we stand for homeland for Jewish people. That's our moral duty. But I mean, like, it doesn't disappoint me, it doesn't discourage me. I keep continue doing it. But at the same time, when the question is asked why the other people are not doing it, because not everyone wants to lose what they have. So that I hope that answers your question. It is a hard place to be, and especially when you don't get any support from the Jewish organizations. I have wrote thousands of emails to a lot of Jewish organizations, and I send them my proposals. I send them my ideas that how we can fight this in a real way. But unfortunately, not a single email was answered. And that is something, I am shocked and I'm surprised why it is.
I wanted to know a little bit about your father, about why, he was in prison. What was his crime? Maybe you can take us through that.
Yes, Daniel. So my father spent his life fighting for the oppressed. He defended Hindus, Christians, and other minorities when he was neither popular nor safe. He spent years in prison, endured torture, and ultimately gave his life of just for the principles and justice of human dignity. He was born in Pakistan. He was a freedom fighter who fought against British. At the age of 14, he was convicted for the treason for British government, and he was sentenced for life in the prison by British. And he only was released in 1947 when the British left India and Pakistan, and that was. So growing up, I learned that human rights are not selective. If you only defend people who look like you, pray like you, vote like you, then you're not defending human rights at all. And unfortunate part is that I was only 12 years old when I will say murdered in prison because he did not receive any medical treatment, and I did not have chance to learn more about him while he was alive because I was so little. But after his death, when I grew up, I read his books, I read his diaries, and he gave me a foundation because in our house, we have the people from different faiths who come in and have the same respect than anybody else. You might be surprised to to learn that in Pakistan, if you are not a Muslim, you're not allowed to drink or eat from the same plates or same utensils. You cannot use them. In our house, everyone was welcome. We ate in the same plates and same, we drink through the same glasses. And that was a big deal to the Islamists, to the extremists. And when he was alive, I was little, but I still hear the neighborhood mosques use Friday prayers, all prayers. And after the prayer, they go to the loudspeaker and talk bad things about my family and my father. At the one point, he was declared kafir, infidel, just because he supported the rights of minorities in Pakistan. And when a mullah, I know you're aware of it, declares someone kafir, which also make him wajibul qatl for other Muslims, means that person need to be killed by other Muslims and they will go to Jannah because of that. So living under that threat and looking inside what he was doing, he was not committing any crime. He was respecting human dignity and human life, regardless which God you pray, which book you read for, if you read a Quran or you Torah or you read Gita or you read a Bible, regardless. And growing up, I learned that human rights are something we need to fight for. And my father's example taught me that courage means standing beside those who are unpopular, vulnerable, and under attack. That lesson ultimately stepped my work fighting anti-Semitism, building Muslim-Jewish relations today. And I keep that fire in me, which I saw in my father. And I continue to fight for the human rights and human dignity because human rights are not selective. You cannot pick who can have the human rights, who can have the rights, who will not.
And I'm sure that he's proud of what you've become today with continuing his legacy of human rights. I wanted to ask you, how did the extremists treat your family? What was it like growing up under that pressure?
Yes, so growing under that was not pleasant for sure. I did not have any friends growing up because the parents always tell their kids that you're not allowed to be friends of these people. You're not allowed to play with their kids. So I played, like I spent a life growing up even in a school without any friends because it was a social boycott. It was, you felt like you're an alien in society or in a country where you're born. You're alien in your own country. That's how it was growing up in Islamist society for me. And this is how I grew up. Yes, there was a people who supported my father who are on the same mission like him, and they were there and they faced the same fate as us, as my family, and we were under threat every day. And I do remember one time my father was in prison and there was thousands and thousands of Islamists. They gather outside our house and they starting fire and throwing the rocks and throwing the bottles and tried to burn down the house while we are in the house. And I'm talking about an experience of a 10-year-old boy looking outside from the window and seeing thousands of Islamists, chanting against my father and against us and throwing the rocks and throwing the petrol bombs into our house. Our house was partially burned. And I cannot forget those moments. And those are the things what I saw growing up. When my father died in prison, his body came to home. And before even we go and take his body to burial grounds, the police showed up with another warrant to arrest him, to arrest the body because they can see he's dead. But they did not leave until someone went to the hospital and got a death certificate and hand over to them. Until then, they will not let the a body to be buried. So this is how I, as a person, grown up, and that's why I have this fire in me, where, regardless what is the consequences are, I always want to stand up. What is the right? What I was taught with the sacrifices of my father.
Now, growing up, what were you taught about Jews? What were you taught about Israel growing up in Pakistan?
So there was two different narratives. I heard one narrative I heard at home from my father, from my mother. My mother was very religious. She prayed 5 times. She recites the Quran in the morning. And I asked her when I heard, so there was as I said, there was two narratives. So one was at home and one was outside. Outside, every Friday, we have almost 5 or 6 mosques surrounding our house. And on the speaker, every Friday, after the prayers, they pray for destruction of Israel. They pray for destruction of the Jewish. And they wanted this world to be without Jewish people, without Israel. This is what their message was. And when I used to hear that, I always went to my mom because I know that she was a devout Muslim, and she woke up in 6 o'clock in the morning and she prayed. She recited the Quran and she prayed. My father was, in and out of the jail, and he was more secular, so he was not that devoted. He was a Muslim, but he was not, praying 5 times a day. But my mother did. So I asked my mother that, Mama, what is about Jewish people? Why these mullahs are against them? And I still remember to the day, she said, because Jewish people are chosen by the God. They are the wonderful and beautiful people. And these mullahs, they don't like them just because that. And that is stick to my heart since today, until today. It sticks to my heart.
When was the first time that you met a Jew growing up?
Yes. So that's that's really wonderful question. You know why? Because a lot of people who hate Jewish in Muslim countries, they have never met a Jew. They never have the experience because what they think about Jewish people is someone who's from a different planet, someone who is not even a human, some kind of alien race. This is how, people where I grew up, I saw the thought of it. So first time I met a Jewish person is when I come to United States. And like many Muslims growing up in Pakistan, I was exposed to negative narratives about Jews and about Islam. Most of what come from politics and social conditioning rather than actual knowing a Jewish people. So when I come to America, I met Jewish people, and actually I did not know because they are Jewish. I found out later and I was like, okay, so I don't see anything different. They are human like us. And all that, things I heard growing up in Pakistan from these mullahs, from these extremists, went down the drain so quickly because it was that, okay, we are the same people. We have the same priorities. There's nothing different about it. There's nothing. We are children of God. God created us equally. And those stereotypes collapsed really quick. And then the really wonderful experience I had was actually when I was in army. One of my soldier who was with me in training, in a basic training. He came to one day and is like, do you want to go? Because in army, you have to be wherever you go, especially when you're in basic training, you have to go with someone else. You will never be alone the whole training session for months where we are in training. You have to go with someone to anywhere. Even you have to go to bathroom, you have to have someone with you. So the soldier come to me and he was like, I want to go pray to Synagogue. Do you mind going with me? And I was shocked and I was like, I love to go with you, but I'm a Muslim. He was like, yes, I know you're Muslim, but still, do you want to go with me? I said, yes, I'll go with you. And then I go with him and we went to the base and there was a synagogue there and we went and that was my first experience, like intimate experience to feel the Judaism and listen the Hebrew language and, listen to the prayers. And I don't know how to explain this. I don't know about it this day, but it felt like home. It felt so peaceful. I don't feel any hate. Rabbi at the end of the prayer didn't ask for destruction of Muslim countries like Muslims in Pakistan were doing after the prayer, asking for destruction of Israel and Jewish people. It was none of that. It was love. It was a welcoming vibe, and it touched my heart. Until this day, I don't forget that first experience of me as a Muslim going to synagogue, hearing the prayers, and feeling that peace and feeling that love. And that stayed with me until today because I was able to see the difference. How Islamist extremism uses masks to spread the hate. And on the other side, I see on the synagogue prayers to the God, love, and welcoming someone. And after the prayer, Rabbi, no, I was Muslim. I had a name tag. And I introduced myself to him and I say, hey, I'm Muslim and this is my first time here. And he welcomed me. He didn't, you know, treat me differently. And that was something I will never forget in my life.
Now, why did you end up joining the U.S. Army, and what did the military service teach you?
Yes. So I come to US as a political refugee, and I know that like in Pakistan, I joined the organizations you know, for have a freedom of speech and live as a free country. And that was our struggle to make a Pakistan a country where people can speak freely and have a freedom. So once I come to US, I saw in my with my own eyes what actually freedom looks like. In Pakistan, I did struggle and I did join the organization where we wanted to have a freedom, but I never experienced it. I didn't know what freedom looks like. So when I came to US, I felt that freedom and I felt the inclusiveness in the United States. And that told me that as a person who is enjoying those freedoms, enjoying that whatever this country is giving me, it is my responsibility and to give it back. And that was my reason that I joined United States Army because serving in the Army changed my life. It taught me discipline, accountability, and the importance of defending democratic values. Also, in the Army, I see the people were bring together from different background, and I see people from all over the world who came here and wanted to defend the same democratic values and freedom we enjoy here in the United States. And that was the reason that I wanted to, in my way, an humble way, to say thank you for this country to give me protection, give me freedom, and I was able to live as a free person in this country, and that's was my way to say thank you, to stand up and not burn the United States flags, not hate the United States, but to stand up and fight for the freedom.
Mansoor, I want to thank you for your time, for your insights. Truly touched by your story. Thank you for being a friend of the Jewish people, the state of Israel, for standing strong despite all the backlash and repercussions for yourself. It's truly touching for me. And how can people find you?
Yes, so I have a nonprofit. I am working on it. We want to educate youth, which is the next generation, and that is the organization. Currently, I'm dedicated to bring the education to the youth and fight anti-Semitism by educating the next generation. Because if we want to fight the anti-Semitism, we want to change this atmosphere of hate and intolerance. It has to be the correct education, not not the kids who learn from TikTok or Instagram about these extremist propaganda, but the truth. So I have founded this organization, Global Youth Unity Project. And if someone wants to visit, the website is www.globalyouthunityproject.org. And also, personally, I am on Facebook, I am on Instagram, LinkedIn is my to-go platform, and also I can be reached by the email, which if you want, you can put it up on the podcast. So yes, that is how to reach me, and I continue my work, and I'm continuing to reach out wherever I can, and I will try to make a difference.
Thank you, Mansoor. Wishing you all the best.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I appreciate this chance to be here and express myself. And thank you very much.